Hey, all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host. Today we have a really great guest on, Mr. Joe Heitzeberg. He is the CEO of online meat provider CrowdCow, which is a really great concept. Can't wait to introduce him to you. I'll be right back with CEO of CrowdCow, Mr. Joe Heitzeberg.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Well, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast, everybody. I want you to welcome my guest. It's a real special guest today. It's the CEO of CrowdCow, which is an online meat purchasing company that started out a few years back. Joe Heitzeberg is from CrowdCow. He's the CEO, and I want to welcome Joe to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. This is great to finally meet you and to be on your show.
Well, I'm really excited to have you because I just discovered your website last month, and it really caught my attention because of the fact that it is a lot different than any other meat provider that you can find online. Especially, I've worked with some others and bought from others, and the main difference I can see is just the different availability that you have from the different farms and the different types of meat cuts and everything. So let's talk about CrowdCow. You know, what's your position with CrowdCow, how this thing got started, where you guys are located, and all that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, right off the bat, you are correct. We are very different from everything. That's because we started this company to do things completely in a different way because we weren't satisfied with anything that we saw out there. So we're an online marketplace for craft meat. That's the easy way to understand what we are. We are for the modern carnivore, and that's someone who's looking for superior flavor, nutrition, and to know that on the other end, raising that animal is somebody who cared about the animal, the environment, and the flavor. So we're the online marketplace for craft meat farms and we provide convenience, 100% traceability, radical transparency, the farm's name on every package. As simple as that sounds, no one else does that. And of course, the convenience of shipping that to your door. So unlike the grocery store, which was what inspired us to start the company, where they can't even tell you what country the meat came from, and the best meats don't make it to the grocery store anyways. We're letting you come to our website and read everything about the farm, know what breed it was, access heritage breeds that you'd never be able to get outside of very specialty places, and have it shipped right to you. So unlike anything else online, we're not forcing a subscription. You buy what you want when you want to buy it. We never buy from brokers. That's what everyone else does. So even if the beef you saw online from another provider said grass finished, you don't know if it came from a feedlot in Mexico or Brazil eating grass pellets. You just don't know. And that's what happens in the industrialized food system. So we built this company specifically to be an alternative to all of that, alternative to fake Wagyu, alternative to all the shenanigans, because as consumers, we're just sick of being deceived and given the rigmarole and the shenanigans. We just wanted to have something as simple as what our friend had, who also partly inspired the company, which was purchasing beef literally from a farmer raising the cow right here where we are. So to answer your question, where we are, we're here in Seattle, Washington. CrowdCow got its start right here in Seattle with farms in our local area, and started selling beef directly from farms to our friends in the area. And for about a year and a half, that's all we did right here in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. And of course, we built up email lists in other parts of the country, huge waiting lists. So we thought, maybe we should expand and see what that would look like, and eventually launched in California and in Nevada and Idaho and Montana, shipments to those places. And today we service the entire country, the lower 48 states, so that everyone can have access to the best craft meat. And we do pork, heritage breeds of pork, truly pasture-raised chicken, these things you cannot find in stores. We do lamb sometimes. We do seafood from time to time. We've got a great fisherman up in Cordova, Alaska, who has the first run Copper River salmon on a boat he named for his daughter, hand wraps every piece in parchment paper, just premium, beautiful stuff. And you know exactly who caught it or raised it, delivered to you. That's Crowd Cow.
Awesome. And like I said, that's one of the things that really attracted me to you guys because for years I bought directly from a farm up in Tennessee that, a husband and wife, team that raises their own cattle, hogs. They raise goats and lamb as well. And they run a loop truck from Tennessee through Georgia and Florida 3 times a year. And they would deliver. So you would just order, your half a cow or your whole cow. And there was co-ops, there's co-ops out there that do that will buy, a whole cow or 2 cows and
Love it.
split it up amongst people. So it's that same type of concept brought to the mainstream. It's that co-op mentality where you're sharing, parts of, you're buying your part of a cow,
Yeah,
but I've done that for years. And I actually used to help her unload the truck, when she came and stopped here on the Tampa market. That's where I'm out of Tampa, Florida.
yeah,
So I would help unload the truck and she would like knock back my shipping costs and stuff. And,
yeah,
we always had people lined up at the back of the truck, that had ordered online. And like I said, this lady would 3 times a year, she still does it, loads up a big old delivery truck and just hauls this meat down through Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia and delivers it. But
and what you're describing is a lot of people do, and it's, I mean, without that part of it, the coordination is kind of a pain, like both for customers
oh
and
yeah,
for farms. So we're solving all of that, making it as easy as just on your iPhone, you can just 5 pounds of ground beef, a couple New York strips, and maybe try a cut you haven't tried very often, you haven't seen in the grocery store, like a skirt steak or flank, or tri-tip or something really awesome for the grill. And we'll give recipes and content, make it easy, but you don't have to worry about, oh, am I going in? I'm sharing this with other people. Who's going to drive the truck out there? All the pain goes away with crowd coverage. Try to make that really easy. We were inspired by people like what you were just describing. I knew this lady and was what inspired us. So we had a friend named Brendan, and he was talking about, oh, I'm getting my cow on Friday, and he talked about the farmer, their family, how they settled this particular place of land when the settlers came to that area, and they picked that land because it was the best land on that island for agriculture. And it was like so romantic for me to hear that, to understand that he had a connection to the people and their family who'd been on this land doing it a certain way, and that he said like, oh, it tastes so much better. And I just felt so let down with at the grocery store. Just like, again, they literally, it's 2019, your grocery store can't even tell you what country it came from. And when you walk through the beer aisle and you have all the different craft beers and you walk past the chocolates, and if you're into wine or coffee or cheese or you name it, if you're a modern carnivore who loves meat and loves grilling and is experimenting with sous vide and these things, when you hit that meat counter, what a boring old place you've just landed, and it's sad. And we just decided there was a giant opportunity to reinvent that for people online by just cutting out the existing establishment, making a new supply chain from scratch, and just ship it direct to people's doors. So it's a big, ambitious, huge opportunity, but and we're going for it.
you have not just grass fed and grass finished, but you have pasture raised and grain finished, which I prefer. I eat a lot of grass fed, but I prefer the grain finished because it does get a little bit more marbled and a little bit
Mhm.
different taste. But you have those options. You got different regions and different farms that produce different,
Yeah.
cuts and different styles and different,
Yeah.
kinds
Well,
of beef.
it's fundamental. I mean, it's funny. Like 4 years ago, when we were just starting the first, few months, and we're here in Washington. By the way, if you know anything about Seattle, it rains a lot, and one of the benefits of that is there's lots of grass growing all the time. It's a very temperate climate. So it's actually a very good place to grow grass. So if you're making grass-fed, grass-finished beef, it's actually some of the best grass-fed, grass-finished beef in the country. But if you start driving west over the mountain pass where it gets dry, it's a totally different story. So when we started, it was all grass fed, grass finished, and we were just finding the best beef. That's what it happened to be. And we had people asking for grain because they liked it better. And we said, well, we're only working with small farms. We want the transparency, the connection to the people. We're not doing feedlot stuff. Are you kidding me? And we got bigger. We drove across the mountains to visit some farms on the eastern part of the state. I remember the very first farm I visited, who we still sell today. Beautiful family, the Gebbers, and they had to do a grain finished. But I was touring it. We're on horseback up in the mountains, grass everywhere. They're on pasture. It's the most idyllic natural environment. And then we come back down to where the house is, and we're standing there, and there's some cattle behind the fence, this giant, huge open area, which looks like a Western Washington enclosed pasture, right? And I go, well, where's the feedlot? He goes, this is the feedlot. You're standing in the feedlot. I was like, you're kidding me. This is a feedlot? I go, well, where's the grain? And he pointed at the cornfield, and he goes, right there. We grow the corn right there. And I was like, well, this is different than I think there's a huge knowledge gap and misunderstanding. A lot of people kind of just want it simple, or it's been oversimplified on their behalf in a way that quite honestly doesn't respect consumers' choices, which is to say, this notion that like grass finished is better and green finished is this feedlot big ag thing. There's that, but there's not all that. There's a craft grain, growing your own. We've got farms on the East Coast that are preserving heritage grains. We've got ones up in Washington that grow their own peas and corn, and in a agrarian society, religious based community that doesn't have bank accounts. They have like shared bank, and they grow everything they need. And these animals are so well treated, and they're grain finished because grass doesn't grow in the summertime when it's dry, but peas and corn do. And it's some of the best beef you'll ever try. And it's also some of the best animal husbandry and environmental welfare and everything else that you will ever find. But you'll never know that unless you visited there and knew the farmer and it was their name on the package. Because again, I'll also show you so-called grass finished beef sold that is feedlot beef using grass pellets in Mexico or Brazil. So you got to, our point is what we discovered through doing this company and meeting the farmers is you have to know the farmer. You have to know where they're growing the animal. You have to know the breed. And furthermore, when you know all this, it just becomes this incredible fun experience because you get different flavor profiles and you get access to the whole animal and all the different cuts. And it just becomes really fun. That's why I use the term for the modern carnivore who's looking for superior flavor, health, and to know what's on the other end. That's what we're all about.
Yeah,
So fun.
it's definitely somebody really cares about what they do than just a big ag farm, like you said. That's just the commercial, run the cows, through the grain, feed, like you said. It's totally different. Just because it's grain fed doesn't mean it's one of the big commercial slaughterhouses, or it's not that. I mean, that's one of the things I love about it. Is that you got,
Labels don't tell you anything. None of the labels tell you anything. The
no, I
organic
know.
label doesn't tell you anything. The animal welfare labels don't tell you anything either. It turns out, because you can qualify for a program and then not be audited or do things that some people will not be considered humane. You could let the animals, if the freeze comes and they're freezing, or you can't afford to feed them in the winter and they start getting skinny, and still they'll be animal welfare approved. Or you can, cut the horns off because you and be approved, or not cut them off because you think that's inhumane. These are oftentimes choices that boil down to the farmer's own tradition and the farmer's own environment and the breed they're raising. They'll make the best choices for what they need to accomplish given their family tradition, the breed, what they're trying to accomplish. You have to understand all that. And a label won't tell you any of that. And in fact, there's too many ways to hide behind labels and pull shenanigans and trickery around that miss the point. And the point is it's a culinary adventure. That's the point.
Exactly. So let's back up a little bit, and we can do this as brief as you want because I know you've probably gone over this a million times. But how did you guys get started? How did you and Ethan get started with Crowd Cow, and how has it grown since you started? And is it?
Well, it started 25 years ago when Ethan and I worked together. We actually did work together many years ago. We hadn't worked together since we worked together long, like 1999 or 2000, But we had this mutual friend named Brendan who had worked for Ethan. Ethan's prior startup was Urban Spoon, the restaurant mobile app. And Brendan was an engineer who worked there. And Brendan was working for me at the time. This was 5 years ago now. And he came to the office one day. We shared an office, and he was like, "Oh man, I'm so excited! I'm getting my cow." And he talked about the farmer. He talked about how they, like I said before, where this farmer was on this island, how they were one of the original families who settled the island, how the beef tasted better, how this farmer cared about the animal, the welfare, the environment, the community, and he was so proud to support that farmer and so excited to get his beef because it tasted so awesome. And I was talking about this with Ethan, and Ethan's wife is actually a vegetarian, and he said, "Yeah, I can't buy 500 pounds of meat." And just in talking through that, it was like there ought to be a website where you can, as a consumer, go on and have that connection to the farmer and directly purchase from them, but only buy 10 pounds if that's all you want, and just have it show up at your door. Why doesn't that exist? And looking at the existing system and how commoditized it is, and all the shenanigans around labels and everything else, we realize that's a huge opportunity, and it benefits the farms too. They would love to have an alternative than to sell out at the auction yard or to have to struggle to go to farmers markets, which are, think about it, it's like the 1800s again. You are driving a product in a truck and then sitting around while people barter for cash. It's not good for someone who has a full-time job, which is growing grass, raising animals, to then have another whole full-time job, which is so limited in its reach and potential. The farmers market.
Yeah, that's the lady that I was buying our meat from. She does that. She has, like I said, she does it full time. Her and her husband, and when they're not, doing the quarterly runs through Florida and Tennessee and Georgia, she goes out to the farmer markets and she sells to local restaurants, and she's working 15-hour days. Besides trying to run the farm and making sure
Yeah.
everything is the animals are taken care of and everything else.
A lot of our customers are people who lived in rural areas because that's where farms are. And there's, oh, this is like the meat I grew up eating. So glad I found you. I live in the city now, and now I can get this meat again, this better beef or better pork chicken. And the thing is, that's what people forget is like the farms aren't located near where the people are. And so for a farmer to go to the farmer's market, that is a huge logistical hurdle. So, we're solving a lot of that for them by creating the supply chain, creating a marketplace, getting the word out. And it's their brand, it's their name on the product, which is really special.
And I think people don't understand that. Yeah, they understand when they go to a supermarket that they're purchasing boxed beef, beef that's already, cut up into certain sections, and they're just buying certain boxes of beef. But it's the same thing at the butcher shop they go to. If they go to a, Fred's butcher shop
Yeah.
down the road, they're not getting it from the local farmer most of the time. They're buying it from the same
Yeah.
purveyors that the supermarkets are. So,
You're right. Yeah. You're right. It's the same industrial beef with a nice, friendly face on it typically. And there's exceptions to that. And there's exceptions to this, even perhaps at some specialty grocery. But by and large, you're correct. And it's dominant. I mean, just to put it in perspective, the beef market today, 86% of it is controlled by four companies. And so at that scale, there's no traceability. There's very limited transparency. Just as an idea, like about almost a year ago, there was a big beef recall. There was a single processing plant owned by JBS, which is a Brazilian company, it's one of the big four, who control the U.S. market for beef. They had a big recall because of food safety issue that had happened, and it affected ground beef from that one plant over a period of, I think it was just several days. Now, the Consumer Reports, who's an advocate of consumers, doesn't take corporate sponsorship money, et cetera. They looked at it like, oh, let's go advise consumers. What do you do? There was a big recall. What should you do? They looked into it, looked into the beef industry, looked into traceability, transparency, and concluded because traceability is so poor, the best advice they can give is if you, citizen of America, purchased ground beef last summer and you still have it in your freezer, throw it out. So think about that. It's like saying if you purchased beer, don't drink any beer
Yeah,
last summer. Like,
yeah,
it just
because
sounds insane, right? Why is that? It's because even though they knew what days the food safety issue happened and what plant it happened, from the point the animals get there and before and the point the beef leaves, there's no traceability at all. And because of the massive scale of the operation, and because the primals go off and then they get cut down, they get ground at the grocery store. Sometimes it gets shipped out as ground beef, then it gets traded hands, goes through a distributor and this and that, and then it's online in a box, shipped in a subscription package from whatever.com. That you cannot know if your ground beef wasn't from that plant just because of the scale of it, unless you have the farm's name on the pack. Then you can.
right, exactly. So, yeah, and that is one of the biggest deals that I think Crowd Cow offers is that I can buy from the farm in Washington, I can buy from the farm in New York, and I know exactly where it came from. You know, that ground beef came from that if I don't like it, I can try buying it from another farm that's on Crowd Cow. Um,
Yeah.
you guys,
And our vision is just to be able to support local purchases first and foremost. That one day we would have enough customers and enough suppliers of high quality that no matter where you live, on any given day of the week, you come to the website and just see local choices and have them ready for purchase in a convenient way. And in a couple of cities, in Seattle and New York City, we have that. We have Seattle area farms. We've got upstate New York farms and Pennsylvania farms close enough to Manhattan that they're truly local, where you can be in Manhattan and you can have like a wide variety. Now, I mean, at the farmers market, most farmers markets don't even have meat. If they do, they'll be like one farm. So I'm just talking about just for local, you'll have a set of choices. If you want to try Piedmontese, if you want to try a purebred Wagyu, a crossbred Wagyu, some Angus, Hereford cross, if you want to do grass fed, grass finished, if you want to do heritage grain, you can try the different flavor profiles. You can know the farmer, their family. No one is doing this on a local level. That's amazing. That's the vision. But today, you can also, if you wanted to, find a truly pasture raised chicken or a purebred Mingalese pork or halibut from sustainably caught halibut from Alaska. You don't want to buy, by the way, East Coast caught halibut because it's overfished. But you'll know that on Crowd Cow and have it be shipped to you no matter where you live in the United States.
one of the first things I order from you is domestic lamb from upstate New York, and because domestic lamb's hard to find, believe it or not, domestic lamb is so much better, in my opinion, than imported lamb. The taste is a lot better. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the people don't understand who've never tried craft meat. The taste is so much better. I mean, we have a whole company now. I would bet every single person in the company is never ordering ground beef at any restaurant ever, except for Shake Shack in Seattle because they serve our ground beef. Because if you're going to spend $12 on a hamburger and you're just throwing your money away on something flavorless, plus the issues with commodity, meat production in this country, you just can't feel good about your money being spent that way. And the taste is so much better. So yeah, it's like chicken. I remember the very first time Crowd Cow ever sold chicken, which was about 2 years ago, and I had a whole chicken from our farmer, and I had a whole chicken from Whole Foods, and I brought them home to cook them side by side. Just salt and pepper, olive oil, pop them in the oven. That's all I did, and got them out, and I cooked them. I ate them side by side, my wife and I, and it was like night and day. It was we can't even finish the Whole Foods chicken. It just there's what's the point? It's bland. It kind of has like a cardboardy aftertaste. It's kind of dry. This other one is so delicious. And it's like the old joke, it tastes like chicken. No, it doesn't. Nothing actually tastes like chicken until you try real chicken. It's incredible. So it kind of spoils you. But people do need to understand that the difference is real and it's big.
yeah, and I think people just look at the price and think that's all they can see sometimes, and they don't understand. I mean, when we even did the co-op, with the lady from Tennessee, we paid more than we would. You broke it down, by the whole cow, but it's still per pound. We paid a premium for it, but we gladly paid that for a better product. So, and I think a lot of people don't understand the kind of junk that they get at the supermarket.
The things you're paying for when you pay a little more money are a not water. So when beef's been dry aged, it'll lose quite a bit of its weight to water weight as it's dry aged. So you're not paying for water. So in fact, dollar per pound, you're actually getting a better deal. So that's one thing you don't see. Another thing you don't see is it tastes much better. Another thing you don't see is you're supporting a local farmer who cares, who's a steward for their local environment and for the animal and the community. Whereas if you are having a cheaper price for something that doesn't care as much about the animal, the environment, and the local community, you are in fact paying for those side effects, which are negative. So you may be, subsidizing a negative outcome for the world. Like yeah, you're paying less of your dollars from your wallet, but you're actually still paying more in terms of that impact. So I joke. There's the big deal right now is alternative meat, and fake meat and stuff, and it's just having a quite a Christmas Eve right now. Everybody's all into it, and it's like, well, we're the alternative to alternative meat. That's crowd cow.
Like you said, though, when they treat it's not just about treating animals. I think a lot of people get that in their head too, as well. We got to give the chicken a bath, or the cow a bath, and we're going to treat it like it's our friend. That's not what it is. When you respect the animal and you respect the product you're selling, it turns out such a better product. You
Yeah,
care about the product you sell. It's just like anything.
yeah,
If you do art, if you're an artist, you paint paintings for a living, you care about what you're putting out there. If you're a commercial ag farm that's just throwing out, how many pounds of chicken you got to throw out there, how many pounds of meat every single day, you don't give a crap about it. You just throw it out there,
yeah.
and
I would
when
say
you,
we look for farmers who have a story that ties to their family and a reason they're doing it, and it's usually a combination of because that's what grandpa did, and they raised this breed in this way on this land, and they're very proud. They're in fact feel kind of honored to be a part of that tradition. It's very special to them. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And so, in that framing, they want to do things the right way. It's not punching in to a job and looking at a spreadsheet around yield and this and that. And then, nor do they have the equipment. So, the other side of animal welfare is like Barb, for human safety. You treat animals well, they treat you well back. And when you've got your family out there with these very large animals, you want to be safe. So let's be calm, let's treat them well, let's stay safe. And secondly, you're absolutely right. And they'll say it very matter of factly. I remember my very first experience on one of our farms, and the farmer was like, okay, as we walk out there, Joe, I'm just going to use this voice. We're just talking to them. Hi, guys, we're coming out here. You're going to meet Joe, And I was like, are you crazy? I asked him, I was like, how do I ask him if he's a hippie or what the deal is? And he's like, what is he? Why does he talk to him like this? And I asked him later, once I felt more comfortable with him, I said, why do you talk to the animals like that? Like you do? He's like, oh, because the meat's going to taste a lot better. If you manage them to stress equals zero, the meat will taste so much better. And that's the
yeah.
ultimate goal here.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to take a little break here and going to run a little ad. I got a sponsor that sponsors the podcast, so I'm going to let them have an ad. But we're going to come back and we're going to discuss a little bit more. So I'll be right back with Joe Heitzeberg from Crowd Cow. Hey, all, I want to welcome again Inkbird as our sponsor for the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Inkbird has more than just barbecue thermometers and instant read thermometers that I've talked about before. Inkbird just came out with a Wi-Fi sous vide circulator that I've been using for a few weeks now that works pretty good. Has over 1,000 watts of power. Has an app that has many times and temps for meats and vegetables. Also has onboard times and temps for meats and vegetables. Runs really quiet. Fits most regular sous vide containers that are the size of the Innovas. So check it out. Look below. There's a link with a code for 30% off of the Amazon price that makes it under $60 right now till June 5th. So check out the Inkbird Wi-Fi sous vide circulator in the description below. Back to our program. All right, I'll welcome back to the second half of the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast with Joe Heitzeberg, CEO of Crowd Cow. And I kind of want to start off going backwards here. I want to ask you, how long has Crowd Cow been around, and how long did it take you from just serving the Seattle market to expanding out into other areas of the country?
Well, we're in our fifth year of the company, which, believe it or not, the first year and a half was basically the Seattle and Pacific Northwest, and I think around 2 years ago we were national. So I guess going on 2.5 years of serving the whole country, and I think it's been a tremendous growth. Invested heavily. We've got about 100 farms in the network that we work with. We have two fulfillment centers that we ship product to the entire country, and we built everything in house because you've got to get a perishable product to people's door quickly, and you've got to get it there frozen. And so we're doing there's lots of technology behind the scenes you don't see, so that you get a text message notification, it's on track, you get the right amount of ice in the box. You get a great out of box experience. Every cut you buy is paired with recipes on how to cook it, and so forth.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to kind of discuss because you've grown so fast for this type of operation to have the local farms. Are you continuing to expand, getting more farms? What do how big do you think you're going to be able to get? You discussed before about maybe that New York and Chicago. You said right now, or was it? Sorry, Seattle, that you're doing the local. Where they can order from local farms.
Yeah.
Are you going to expand that into as big as you can, or?
Well, definitely not as the words as big as we can. We're really focused on selectivity and quality. I think there is a difference in the taste, and there's a real feel good factor in being able to know something about the person who raised your meat and have it be someone you want to support. So we want that part of the experience to be core to everything we do. So it'll never be about growing fast in terms of the suppliers, but it will be about remaining selective. And we also care a lot about variety. So we rather bring on a small producer with a very limited seasonal thing, but they have something really special that you're unlikely to find anywhere else. So that's why we've brought on. I'm thinking back to when we first started sourcing outside of the Pacific Northwest. Of course, to the East Coast because that's where people are and that's where our fulfillment center. And the next place we went was Texas because there just so happened to be some of the very best Wagyu producers in the country are located in Texas. And these are full blood and purebred. These are 100% DNA Kodoge Washu breeders. We've got one that the bull won the Houston Cattle Show for Wagyu, where the sire of that bull was actually sold back to Japan. These are not Wagyu burgers that you see from time to time at restaurants. These are the breeders who are the elite tier producing the 100% DNA Wagyu. So we've got people like that so that you can actually purchase and enjoy their meat. So we're very selective and we're always on the hunt for things that are special and unique and that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, and I noticed, like I said, you have that land producer that I ordered from. That I haven't had it yet. I think that's going to be one of my next YouTube videos I do is the domestic lamb chops. So, and it looks to me like they're kind of seasonal as well. When they run out of stuff, they run out. So it's not like going to the grocery store, where there's an unlimited supply of ribeyes. When I noticed that when I ordered from you is that there's 5 left or there's 3 left.
Yeah.
So it's limited, and and then
It's real.
yeah,
What can I say? It's real.
yeah. So let's talk about that. Now you said you have 2 processing centers in the country. Is it like on the
Well,
West
there's
Coast?
fulfillment centers. We in fact work with a lot of processors. So we're talking about like butchery, right, and cutting and wrapping. We work with a ton of them all across the country. That's part of the marketplace. We're aggregating producers, raising the animals, and butchers cutting the meat up, just to simplify for you, in different parts of the country. From there, it's going to be routed out through one of our 2 fulfillment centers. So that's where it's going in a box based on what you ordered. You ordered from 3 different farms and 2 different kinds of protein, and it's going to go in a box with a handwritten note and postage with the ice in there and all that stuff. Those are our distribution centers. We have 2 of those today.
So you arrange the processing of the cow. So you pretty much purchase the cow from the farm, and they don't do any of the processing, correct? You take it from there, and
Correct.
then
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Farms raise animals, not steaks. So we have to help them to coordinate with processors to get it, in a consumer friendly packaging. And that's something that we're also able to bring a benefit to these small producers that otherwise aren't able to work with under USDA supervision so that it could get out to people who live in different states. And so we're able to come into a region and coordinate together a handful of the best producers with the local processors and make it all work together through our software and through our coordination. So that's been a huge unlock for the company. Where we started, we weren't literally able to expand to other parts of the country because we simply didn't have enough, power. We didn't have enough brand recognition or reputation or customers or anything else. So we had to really scrap it together at first with mom and pop operations, here in the greater Seattle area before we could really graduate to the next tier up of people, the processing center. Our philosophy is once the animal, is no longer living, then you do want to be, scaled up. You do want to be efficient, right? You've got to get the meat to the customer quickly and in a safe condition. And you've got to have the seals on the meat be in pristine quality, and you've got to have all that, right? That scale is where you really benefit from being a little bigger. So at first, it was that part was a real challenge in the company. For sure.
yeah. And I have personal experience with that. I have a friend of mine that from church that he was a farmer for many years, just raised crops, but about 4 years ago he decided to throw some cattle on his farm and went into that. And one of the first, head of cattle that he sold was to me. And so I
Yeah.
was like his guinea pig, and we had to find local processor. And one of the things, and I even experienced this when I was part of the co-op, when you start getting into different cuts, how you want that cow broken down, the cost just
Yeah.
goes up because it's a lot easier for a processor to take that whole cow and throw it into ground beef,
Yep.
than to slice it up into 2.5 inch steaks, or you want half inch steak, 1.5 inch, all those kinds of details. Uh, every time, even when I was buying from the co-op, if I wanted, to keep the brisket whole instead of ground beef, it cost more. If I wanted to have the steaks, roasts certain size, it cost more because every time you ask the processor to do something besides just throwing it in a big vat of, ground beef, it takes more time, and so it just costs more. So
Well, there's a lot of decisions. You can't have a T-bone and tenderloins in New York. So there's a trade-off there.
exactly.
Just physically. And ground beef. Do you want 1/3 pound patties? Do you want flat or do you want more roundish? Do you want squared off? Do you want I mean, do you want it dry aged or not? These things take time and money and effort, and there's decisions. What kind of wrap do you want? Butcher paper? Do you want cryovac? All these things. And so, in the sort of at the small end of it, I think where the independent producers end up having a lot more overhead is you're right. It's like one customer buying one cow. They got to have they have 45 minutes of conversation to figure out the cut plan. That's time. Time's money. It's inefficient for everyone involved, and it's confusing because there's these trade-offs and the cost change, and then of course, there's the cost of the animal, and then there's the cost of the meat. And guess what? It's yield down to meat. You're not right. The bones weigh stuff too. That the hide weighs something. You're not all eating it all, and so people need to
Exactly.
understand what they pay per pound from the animals different from what you pay per pound for the steak, and then it gets frustrating, it gets confusing for people, and with the super scale big ag approach, it's all about lowest cost, lowest cost, lowest cost. Don't care what country it came from.
Right.
Very different world. So if you want to have the better flavor, the connection to the farmer, but you want to have the convenience, there was just nothing that existed when we started this company. There still isn't anyone kind of crazy enough to try to build that as we go.
And one of the things that my friend learned from me being the guinea pig is he didn't want to do the retail selling the cows, to individuals anymore because of that. He just wholesales them out now to suppliers. he raises, he about 20 or 30 head at a time, and he just has, a couple distributors he sells them wholesale to. So he doesn't have to worry about
Yeah.
processing and all that stuff. So
I mean, like
there's
you said, that's what happens in the, especially in the middle part of the country where there is an establishment for the wholesale, commodity producers. Another place, like upstate New York and Washington State and other places in the country, there's great beef, as I mentioned before, but they don't have that industry to sell to necessarily, and so they're kind of screwed. It's hard for them without this direct market. But in those places in the middle of the country, I have one farmer in Montana who does kind of both, and she sells to us, but she'll sell some to the industrial. But they'll take her Wagyu purebred, grass finished. I mean, some of the best meat you'll ever try, and it's out there on this homestead deeded land in Montana. It's gorgeous, and because there's just no one living in Montana, she doesn't have a lot of people to sell to, so she has to sell it to the industrial. But they'll take those animals and be like, "Whoa, these look funny. They've got horns on them. I guess they're longhorn." And they'll write down on the little form, for the auction, longhorn, and she'll laugh, and I'll cry a little bit because those are not longhorn. Those are some of the most incredible and rare breed of cattle you can find anywhere. To be missed, what a missed opportunity to call them longhorn and then just ship them off to a feedlot in Kansas City.
and it's going to
And
lump
she doesn't,
with, yeah.
she'll never know where they were served or who ate them. No one will know they were Wagyu. They're just going to be mixed in with everything. They're going to be fed out in a feedlot for one thing, where they're all going to taste the same anyways at the end of that because they're all eating the same low grade, high calorie, cheap, you know, feedlot food, right? So it's a shame that that happens in the industrial system, that some of this craft stuff is actually just goes to waste.
So let's talk about some of this stuff that you guys are exclusive on, and that you've actually just released, the A5 Japanese Wagyu brisket that kind of excited me too. I don't know if I can afford one, but
It's a lot of A5 Wagyu right there. So A5, just for people who don't know, you've heard the term Wagyu. It just means Japanese cow. Um, in Japan, there are four breeds of cattle that are native to Japan. One of those breeds, called the Kuroge Washu, is special because it has a genetic ability to metabolize the food that it eats and to marbleize that internally to the muscle. And so when those animals are raised with zero stress, and they'll just create more marbling than other breeds will by far, and on the inside. So instead of that big fat cap that just keeps growing as the animal gets older, it's just creating more and more intramuscular marbling. And the fat, we can go in for hours. I could talk about, it's a different quality of fat with it melts at a lower temperature and it has this umami flavor. But suffice to say, it's famous because it melts in your mouth when you eat it. It's just an incredible experience. So we of course, in this country, you could find actual A5 being the highest rated of this breed in Japan, from time to time. Most of the stuff you see in America that's called Wagyu, by the way, even if it's using Japanese characters, Japanese sounding farm names, and all this stuff, the shenanigans that you'll find online when you go search for it, even then, it won't be from Japan. It won't be A5. But there is some. Typically, you find it at high-end restaurants in LA or in the lot in Las Vegas. But what you'll never find is brisket, because in Japan they don't export the brisket, so that was not a thing. It's expensive beef. So Americans, being how they are with, what are the best cuts of beef, right? Tenderloin, rib steak, right? The high end steakhouse cuts. So what happened was, in getting the Japanese A5 Wagyu, the American restaurants were like, just give me the tenderloin and ribeye. Well, we're over there working directly with farms, and I remember being at a restaurant actually in Japan and asking this. It was a nose to tail restaurant in Japan, which is very rare, anyways. And I said, "Well, give me a cut that I wouldn't have normally." And he's like, "How about brisket?" And I was like, "No way, we eat brisket all the time in America." And it got me thinking, why not import the brisket? Like, and why not cook a brisket, a Japanese A5 brisket? And has anyone ever done that? And so, we started working with our farms and processors and importing some briskets, and we took some to Texas to some Kreitz's barbecue and Law barbecue, and we put them in the smoker for the first time they'd ever had an A5 in their smoker, and just said, "Hey, what do you think?" And they thought it was amazing. They were, touching the fat and feeling it, and oh God, go try this. They're calling their friends over, and it was very clear to me that it was a special. If it's a special experience for the top of the brisket world in Austin, Texas, then this is something we've got to bring to more people. So the Packer briskets are these enormous, A5 Packer briskets. The first time you'll ever been able to get those, period, in America, and that's what we have.
Yeah, and they start out at 30 pounds, so they're not your 14, 12, 14 pound brisket like you'd normally get at Costco. So it's
Yeah,
they're amazing. The pictures are amazing on them. Yeah, and and some people don't understand. I've posted on my groups and stuff, and people, oh, I'll just never pay that much money for that. Look at all that fat, and it's like like you just said, it's not just fat. It's not like the
no.
fat that you get on a
Well,
fat cab
fat,
at Prime.
no, fat is flavor, first of all. And second of all, the Kuroge Washu purebred fat is different. It's very high in oleic acid. Oleic acid and glutamic acid are what creates umami flavor. So right off the bat, you have a different flavor experience. Secondly, it melts at body temperature. So you can touch the fat and it'll kind of melt in your fingers. That creates this mouthfeel. It's incredible. Just different experience. But what I like to do with it is, if you're cooking a A5 Wagyu brisket, is catch the fat as it drips off and save that and use that to cook
It's like bacon
vegetables or to
grease.
scramble eggs. No, it's better than bacon grease because bacon grease has kind of an overwhelming flavor. If you cook anything in bacon grease, someone's just going to say, "Oh, it's eggs cooked in bacon grease." But if you cook eggs in rendered A5 Wagyu fat, people will just look at you and say, "Wow, I've just had the best scrambled eggs of my entire life. You're a genius cook." You know what I mean? It blows people's mind. I'll go ahead, try these scrambled eggs. They'll go like, "What did you do? These are incredible." I was like, "Oh, well, A5 Wagyu fat," and it really is incredible. I can't exaggerate. Every time I think to myself, it can't be as good as I remember, and I do it again, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, it's amazing." Like
Well,
you can take a kid who doesn't like vegetables and feed him spinach sauteed in A5 Wagyu fat, and they'll just go, "Oh my God, this is the best."
yeah. One of the conversations I had about it when I first saw it came out, people were like, oh, it's just, I'd never buy that. It's way too expensive. And, that's crazy. And it's like, well, it's the McLaren of the brisket. I mean, you got people that buy Kias and you got people that buy McLarens. It's not something you're going to buy if you're your normal everyday barbecue thing. It's a special thing that you're going to spend the extra money on. It's not something you're going to eat every single
So,
day. And,
it is a showcase. For people who don't want to try it, put it on your bucket list and try it anyways.
yeah,
But if not, think about what it is, the links we went to get it, and just understand, you are what you eat. The animals are what they eat, and they're all different and they're all interesting. And try one of our other farms where the price is comparable to what you'd find at a high-end grocery store, but infinitely better. That's what I would say.
yeah. Well, I want to try the olive wagyu because I'm reading about that, and I've never even heard about it till I found Crowd Cow about this olive wagyu, and that's one of the things I'm gonna put on my bucket list because it sounds fascinating to me, and to be able to try something that you can't get anywhere. You guys are exclusive on that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we in fact are the I mean, put it this way, my first trip to Japan for this company, I went to Hyogo Prefecture, a place called Awaji, which is where most of the Kobe beef is raised. It's in Hyogo Prefecture. Awaji is most of the Kobe beef is raised there. And I went to a cattle auction, and I speak Japanese. I was a double major in college and did business for years in Japan. So I was there speaking in Japanese to the farmers and to the slaughterhouse guys at the auction about beef in Japan. Tell me about it. What makes it Kobe beef? What are different regions, etc. And I asked, what are some of the interesting ones? What are some of the niche ones? What are you guys excited about? And they pointed me to olive wagyu. They're like, oh, this is island down in Kagawa, and these farmers feed them olive peels, and it makes it taste different. And and they use the waste product from olive oils, which is good for the ecosystem. And so these farmers have something really special. It's really cool. And and when I went to visit those farmers, and I said, "This is incredible." Like this farms, they're very few. First of all, there's like 2,000 animals total, right? And they're feeding them olive peels, which boosts the oleic acid, creates a different mouthfeel. It's just a wonderful story about um, agriculture cooperation amongst the olive growers, the olive oil makers, and the cattle farmers in this tiny little island where they're very far from any big city in Japan. I want it. I want to import this. How do I do it? And they're like, we don't know. I go, what do you mean? Well, to export beef from Japan, it's got to be done under USDA supervision, even in Japan. And we don't have that here in Kagawa. So we don't even know where to go for that. And so I actually had to wait for over a year, and I had to work with producers in another area in Kagoshima, and I had to convince them to work with essentially their domestic competitor in Kagawa Prefecture, get the two sides talking together to get it out. So yes, we sell olive wagyu on our website, and yes, it is easier to buy olive wagyu in America on our website than it would be to buy olive wagyu in Tokyo, Japan,
That's
because
crazy.
we made it happen because it's very special. But um, was it worth it? Yeah, I mean, it's some pretty special beef.
Now, I'm looking right now. Is there a way to order some right now, or are you completely out? Because I'm sure it's limited.
It's very limited. Just to give you an idea, when I was there last time, and we handpicked the steers, the actual animals that we were importing, and I had like, I think I was trying to remember, I had 12 that were ready for slaughter, were mature enough to be ready to purchase. And he was like, which ones do you want? And I'm like, all of them. Do you have more? No. Okay, so I guess I'm getting these 12. And it was like, I was like, well, which do we know which are going to be A5 or A4 or A3 in terms of the grading? I'm like, no, we don't know until they're slaughtered. So I'm like, okay, well, let's let's buy them all. And some are going to be A3, some are going to be A4, some are going to be A5, which just means that some are going to be so marbled as to be overwhelming. Eat a few bites and you're done, down to like, oh yeah, I can eat a whole steak and it's going to be the best steak of my life. A3. So I looked at it that way after eating so much of it in Japan of the different grades. I just said, let's buy all 12. Let's go big here. Buy all 12, and if we get some A3s, some A4s, some A5, great. We'll make that all available on our website. So the best way to get it is go to our website /olive wagyu, enter your email address, and watch out for the notifications, and then jump on it fast.
So let me. That's another question that brings up. This will kind of winding down here, but a lot of your meats from the regular farms are not graded prime, choice, select, anything like that you would normally see in a grocery store. Are they mostly like a CAB, the certified Angus beef?
What I've heard, no, they're not graded. Grading is a mark of a industrial food commodity, in my opinion. When I show you a Piedmontese New York steak and it has hardly any marbling in it, you would look at that and just go, I don't want that, until you taste it. And then you're like, oh, damn, give me that every day. So for us, it's about the flavor profile and how the animal was raised, and the different breeds that we have that are never available in the grocery store are such culinary experiences that, again, grading is just the mark of an industrial system that, for me, is just, it misses the point. It's like, I don't know, it's like talking about like the carbonation level of beer. Is that how you buy beer? No. I mean, and so we don't, and nor is that system available at the local and regional level, at the bespoke level. It's neither relevant or available. So we don't do it. We've never pressed to do it either.
Well, I know that it adds more cost to the beef, and they only grade it from one section of the cow. It's not doesn't tell you what the marbling is going to be throughout the whole cow. It could.
Would you rather have a prime steak that came from an animal that was shipped from wherever it was grazing to an industrial feedlot in somewhere in the middle of the country and then fed a high calorie, low cost input to get as much fat as possible, but it graded quote unquote prime? Or would you rather have a purebred Wagyu from one of those farms in Texas I described, which are not graded, but if they were, would be above prime?
I definitely want the Wagyu. I definitely want the higher quality meat because, yeah, and I think people don't understand the grading system that's put in place by the USDA is not a quality meter. It's just a, marbling of a certain part of the cow. And it doesn't mean that
Right.
cow quality of that meat is any better than the choice or the select. It's just the way that's kind of marbled in one part of the cow. And like you said, I'd rather have that higher quality meat.
Let's take it back to the grocery store. Let's pretend you were on the beer aisle, but instead of all those beers, there was just a white can with the word beer on it. And then in smaller letters, it said light. And then on the one next to it, it said medium. And the one next to that, it said dark. That's what we have in beef today at the grocery store. But that is not what uh, the farms of America are actually raising. They're raising these incredibly different breeds. In fact, even grass is different. Like go to any Montana farmer and just say, "Well, tell us about your grass. What kind of grass grows here?" They'll know everything about it. The good ones will, because they know that the grasses that they grow and feed their animals are vital to the health of the animal and the taste and flavor of what they're raising that their grandfather raised on that same land. That mentality is what we call craft meat. It's better, and it's just the antithesis of the commodity grading system. Again, I don't buy beer. I'm not the I don't go out for dinner and say like give me a light beer or a dark beer. I order a microbrew.
Well, I don't know how old you are, but I'm old enough to remember generic beer that was a white can that just said beer, and nobody bought it. That's why it didn't last very
Well,
long.
I'm old enough to remember when coffee was a 50 cent yes no question, and it no longer is that, and we're better for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of things are different than they used to be. That's for sure,
Yeah.
and they're better. Things are choices we have available. Uh, the different care that the local farmers put into stuff. I'd rather have coffee like you said, where I know where it came from and I know the beans, and it's not just some coffee.
Yeah.
It could be a mixture of 12 different kinds of beans from anywhere in the world that nobody cares about, and they threw a bunch of dirt and shells in there with it. So,
Yeah, I mean, and I like lattes and macchiatos and frappuccinos, and that's where you get into the culinary side of it as well. It's like, I want to learn about sous vide. I want to know reverse sear. I want to experiment with different salts, and I want to try, bean shotan charcoal. And if I'm going to spend, look, meat is expensive even if you're buying the commodity stuff, and it's the center of the meal. It's a central thing in your health and dietary choice. It's probably the most expensive thing you bought for the meal in terms of ingredients, no matter where you're buying it. So like, let's go all in. Let's get the best we can, and let's cook it well, and let's invite some friends over, and let's also know that we supported the farmer on the other end who cared.
exactly. Well, I think it's a great concept. I love it, and it's really attracted me to deal with the crowd cow. I mean, it just the overall concept is awesome. So where do you see it going? It's growing really fast, and I know it's going to continue to grow. And we've talked about that. Now, do you think you're going to expand it out into other countries or Canada once it gets
Um,
going?
right now we're just focused on the United States and craft meat here. So we're working as a marketplace now, which is very exciting. It gives even more connection between the consumer and the producer, and more reasons for the producer to be part of something themselves and have more of a role in that, and to get more feedback directly, which they've never had in the existing system. They love it when they know something about the people who enjoy their meat and they can get that feedback. So we view ourselves as a movement and a community and a marketplace, and so we're just investing in that for now, and it's going well and it's a lot of fun. So let's stay the course on that.
Well, I do notice that you have one farm out of Australia, and then
Yeah,
the Japanese farm. So
Yeah, that's true. We do have in Tasmania is like some of the best. Sure, there is a little bit of seasonality in the grass finished beef. So, we actually have a hard time getting grass finished beef in the wintertime in America because guess what? Snow, ice, grass isn't growing, and a lot of there is a seasonality in that beef. So, to have really good quality grass finished beef, Tasmania is counter seasonal or year round actually, and there's some of the best that we've found down there. In terms of Japanese Wagyu, I mean, we today have the best selection of Wagyu, period, because we work with specialty breeders in the U.S. who are full blood and purebred, as well as crossbred, award winning breeders here in the U.S., traced back to some of the original folks who got the DNA into the country before it was outlawed by Japan. And then, of course, you have to go to Japan and get Wagyu from Japan too, because the way they raise them and the gene pool that they're dealing with in Japan is so much bigger, and their obsession with quality control and grading standards and the training and rigor they put into that, it's just so very different that it creates a product that you cannot get in the United States, and it's a premium price. So, it's the full spectrum. I always say it's about the variety, and you should have a tasting flight.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about Crowd Cow
Yeah.
before we say goodbye?
No, thanks for having me. Really, you've made me hungry by getting me to talk about beef and pork and chicken. So thanks a lot. I think I'm going to have a second lunch.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I think everybody needs to check out Crowd Cow. Take a look at it. Don't just glance over it. Read the whole concept. Take a look at how it started, all the different varieties that they have. Check out the farms because you can order directly. You can pick a farm if you just want to support a certain farm. It's a really great concept. I really like it. I want to thank you again, Joe Heitzeberg, from the CEO of Crowd Cow, for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Make sure you check out Crowd Cow. There is a discount code in the description below for your first order. And make sure you subscribe to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check us out on our YouTube channel. And I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast.